Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is my visit to Terra. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the important work of Astral Club and spreading the word of astral projection, you can do so. When you sign up for Patreon, you get a library of downloaded episodes, which you can put on your podcast app and listen anywhere where the internet's not real available. Of course, there's no commercials. There's emails where we can talk back and forth. You can share your experiences, and I can answer questions. And of course, you get advanced videos on Sunday. Next up, if you'd like to arrange for a private lesson to learn how to astral project or to improve your abilities, I'd be more than glad to work with you. You'll find an email in the description where you can request information. And of course, there is a link in the description as well for Patreon. If you recall, during the Astral Guide School episodes, one of the assignments was to spark life on a new world. And we were given some instruction and then sent off to achieve our goal. I was lucky, in conjunction with this planet, which was orbiting fairly close to a red dwarf star, which, from my astronomical knowledge as an amateur astronomer back when I was a kid, red dwarf stars tend to be fairly stable over many, many billions of years, which can be a good place to start life, because one of the important things about life is stability. Yes, we need change because it shakes things up a little bit, but you also need long periods of stability so that you can get life going. So I came upon this planet. At the time, the seas were red, and there was islands of land scattered about the planet. There was one mass of land, but most of it was ocean, which appeared reddish to me. And in conjunction with some lightning and some energy work, I was able to jumpstart cellular life on this planet. Now, at the time, I didn't really come up with a name for it. So I've thought about it, and I discovered, why don't I just name it Terra Nova? It's not the most original name in the world, but I think it's kind of cool. And Terra Nova, of course, means new land. So why not? The last time I went back to check on it, I went about 1 billion years into the future. And I had just arrived when I had received a signal disturbing me from my studies, from my examination of my planet. And this was by the Galactic Council. And so I never got a chance to go back again. Since it's been a while, I had decided to go back again, and this time do a more effective survey of the planet to see what kind of life might have evolved there. So when I left my body, I focused on the vibration of my planet, which I have, of course, now named Terra Nova. And while I was projecting myself to that ident, I also projected about 1 billion or so years into the future, because obviously life needs time to evolve from microscopic life to something larger. On Earth, it certainly took a good amount of time as well, so I infer that it would be similar on another planet, assuming, of course, that any life evolved. When I regained consciousness, I was hovering above this blue world. The ocean was now blue, so that tells me that something had happened such that the iron oxide or whatever in the water had disappeared, and that we were probably now dealing with a planet that had some sort of an oxygen atmosphere happening. I have no idea, obviously, what percentage of oxygen, but my guess is there had been some sort of changes going on. I soared over the planet just to survey it quickly. There were still some islands, but now there seemed to be a larger land mass in the planet that was surrounded by this universal ocean. Now, of course, I still saw the red dwarf, which was prominent in the sky. Now, it's a small star compared to ours, but my planet is closer, so it appears larger. And of course, in order to be in the life zone of a red dwarf, you need to be closer than typically the Earth would be to our particular star. I noticed there was no greenery or any life that I could see as I flew over that continent, which to my mind kind of looked like Australia. At least that's the closest I could compare to land on Earth if you're trying to get a vision. Although it's hard to tell just how big it was because you're trying to compare it against something and there's nothing to compare it against. But I would say, based on the time it took me to fly over it, that it's a pretty darn good size continent there, surrounded by this universal ocean. But as I said, as I flew over, it was just nothing but, it looked to be mostly of volcanic origin, based on the black color of the rocks. So I'm assuming that its origin is volcanic in nature. And certainly the islands looked very similar. So what that told me, of course, is that it's a geologically active planet, which is what you want if you want to have a long-term life cycle, because if there is a molten center, such that volcanism is occurring, then that means that there's some sort of a magnetic field. And if you're going to be close to a red dwarf, or indeed if you're in the life zone of any star, it really helps to have a magnetic sphere, or magnetic shield, to fend off some harmful CMEs, or coronal mass ejections, or miscellaneous radiation headed your way. So by the volcanism, I can infer that the planet indeed is geologically active. So I was happy about that. However, I didn't see any evidence of life on land, which didn't unduly shock me because it took quite a while for life to crawl up and start thriving upon land, whether it's plant or animal. So that doesn't mean the planet is lifeless. It just means the land is currently barren. So what I did is based on the knowledge I have of Earth, which is look in the oceans, because that was the birthplace of life here on Earth. So I figured it was probably a pretty good idea that life would have begun here in the oceans as well. Since I was standing, as I'd landed after surveying the continent, I was standing on the shore, and it was a very scenic shore. There was waves crashing up against the shore, and I don't know whether that was caused by the influence of the gravity of their sun. I mean, we're even influenced by the gravity of our sun, but we're further away, so our moon has much more influence over our tides. But evidently, perhaps the red dwarf was exerting some sort of gravity, or there was something else going on, that there were some waves. Now, I wouldn't say they were surfing waves, but there was some waves crashing, against the shore. And I decided to just dive into this ocean. Now, since I went a billion years in the future, I had a physical presence. In other words, I had the ability to touch down on ground, and I could I could touch the rocks, for instance, and I could get an idea as to their origin and their basic feel. It's a very different type of sensation than what you sense in the physical. I had a basic feel for the rock, but then I always wondered to myself, am I actually feeling this rock through some sort of astral sense, or am I using my memories of picking up various rocks on Earth, and therefore using those memories to flesh out this feeling of dealing with a physical object? Who knows? At any rate, I did have the ability to touch and to feel, even though it was somewhat different from what my experience would have been in my physical body. So I waded into the shallows, and I went down probably about 40, maybe 50 feet, which I believe is about 15 meters for our non-imperial using Astral Club friends. And I swam for a bit over a sandy type of area, which was black sand, which I once again figured was volcanic in origin. When after about 10 minutes of walking, really, that's what I was doing. I was just walking on the floor, which to me seemed a lot more fun than swimming because it was cooler. And I found that there were these strings of pearls that were growing up from the sea floor. Around their base was green, I guess, algae type vegetation. As I looked at them, I was extremely excited because this was the first, what I considered probably multicellular life that I'd observed on this planet. And since it was my planet, I was quite proud of it. The name that came to me for this plant was, I was thinking what my daughter would have called it, and she probably would have called it pearl babies. So that is the name that I granted this plant. It was quite beautiful. Like I said, it was like an assemblage of strings of pearls, and there were numerous of them growing out of the sea floor, stretching upwards, with the algae there being greenish brown. I assume once again that there was probably some sort of photosynthesis going on, with CO2 being converted into oxygen, and perhaps that had been going on for many millions of years, and this life form had emerged. I reached out just to touch one of the little pearls, and it felt very, very, it looked smooth, but it felt kind of porous to me. And it had an interesting effect. As soon as I touched it, the whole string lit up like it was phosphorescent, and that thrilled me. But right when I did that, I noticed the algae started moving about as if it was being subjected to some sort of stream or some sort of current. And I watched with glee as it started reaching upwards and started wrapping itself around my hand. Now, if I was in my physical body, I might have, panicked. But since this was essentially my child, I was quite fascinated by this. I thought that this perhaps is some sort of a basic or elemental defense system to protect this new pearl babies string of pearls plant. And it was quite fascinating. And like I said, I just kind of watched it for a while. But then I wanted to move onwards, so I gently unwrapped the algae that had wrapped itself around my hand. Sure, I could have easily jerked my hand out of it, but I didn't want to damage my new plant. So I was very careful to unwrap myself very carefully. And then I proceeded to float over the rest of the field of these pearl baby or pearl string plants. And it covered a pretty good sized area there on the sea floor. And I thought to myself, I think this is a pretty darn good start to life here, and I'm quite proud of it. And right at that point in time, I received a signal. It was a call, but it was an ident that I couldn't quite recognize. Have you ever had a memory that seems so far away that it rings a bell, but you can't quite place it? But it was a gentle call, yet it was persistent. So reluctantly, I decided to respond to it. And once again, I had to cut short my life survey of Terra Nova. Zooming in on this signal, I lost consciousness. And then when I regained my awareness, I found myself on Haven. And I was thrilled because I didn't think I'd ever visit there again, because if you recall, I had the ident wiped from my memory last time because I didn't want to endanger their planet by allowing some other possibly hostile life form to try to steal the ident from me and destabilize what is a very advanced civilization of plant-based creatures. I named the planet Haven because it is a gentle haven. It's beautifully green with this glowing light just surrounding the atmosphere and the planet. And there's just this sense of peace and calm that I have rarely felt anywhere here on Earth. And I found myself at the usual spot that I had appeared in the past. And I was approached by a delegation of my Havenite friends. And they greeted me, and I was very happy to see them. Because as I said, I didn't think I'd ever be able to talk with them again. And I thanked them for summoning me, and I asked them, was there something I could do for them? Is there something they needed? And they communicated with me that they were going to have an ascension ceremony. This is a very sacred ceremony for the Havenites. It happens infrequently, is the idea that I got. And the Havenites themselves exist in the high third and can easily transition into the fourth. But they go back and forth, allowing themselves access to the spiritual plane, but also allowing them to re-enter the high third into a physical body, which was of plant origin, and allows them to experience the learning processes and the stimuli and just the beauty that they can access there in the high third. But when a pod, because this always happens in a pod, which I believe is their version of an extended family. But I think it has a much deeper meaning than I could understand. But that's really the best way I can describe it to you. At any rate, when a pod or extended family decides that it is ready to and willing to progress permanently onto the spirit plane, there is an ascension ceremony. And it is the most sacred ceremony that occurs on Haven. And that they were inviting me, this representative of the planet Earth, to participate and observe this sacred ceremony. It's something that had never been observed by an outsider before. So I was extremely complimented and eager to participate. And we'll get into the Ascension ceremony on Planet Haven in the next episode. If you like this, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure that bell is solid so you get notified Wednesday afternoon and Saturday morning when the new episodes are posted. And please, questions and comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say about Terra Nova or anything else. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.